Let's be real. When you or I screw up at work today, we accidentally hit reply all on a company email and just wish the earth would swallow us whole. But back in the day, when an inventor screwed up, it usually ended with them turning into a human pavement pancake. Welcome to the absolute peak of weird history. Grab a beer and pull up a chair, because today we're diving into the minds of 9 absolute geniuses who woke up, looked at their shiny new untested contraptions, and said, you know what? I'm gonna bet my actual life on this. Spoiler alert, they lost. Hard. Like, imagine standing on the freezing observation deck of the Eiffel Tower in 1912, looking down at a crowd of thousands, and thinking, yep, this homemade silk bedsheet is definitely gonna make me fly. That's Franz Reichelt for you. But does he survive the yeet? Today, we are uncovering some of the most unhinged Darwin Award-winning crazy historical facts, where creators literally got Control+Alt deleted by their own creations. Let's kick things off with humanity's relentless, unhinged obsession with ignoring gravity. If you think your daily commute sucks, wait until you hear about Henry Smolinski and Hal Blake. The year is 1973. These two engineers looked at bumper-to-bumper traffic and thought, what if we just flew over it? Their brilliant solution was the Ave Mizar. Now, how do you build a flying car? Do you spend decades engineering a sleek, aerodynamic, state-of-the-art chassis? Hell no. These absolute madmen literally sawed a small Cessna airplane in half and bolted the wings to a freaking Ford Pinto. Yes, the Ford Pinto. The 1970s hatchback historically famous for exploding into a fireball if someone bumped its rear bumper. Henry. Bro, the Pinto is a certified death trap on land. Hal, I know. Let's put it in the sky. I swear to you, that actually happened. They slapped an aviation engine on this Frankenstein's monster, hooked the car's steering wheel to the plane's wings, and somehow finessed 34 pre-orders from people with more money than survival instincts. But during a test flight in September, physics came to collect. Thanks to a bad weld, the right wing strut gave out mid-air. The wing just noped out of existence, and the Pinto plane spiraled out of the sky from 120 meters up, crashing in a fiery explosion. They basically built a flying Pinto bomb. But hey, at least they had an engine. Back in 1896, a German dude named Otto Lilienthal decided engines were for cowards. Otto was the pioneer of gliders, successfully yeeting himself off hills over 2,000 times. Sounds like a pro, right? Well, there was one tiny, minuscule, absolutely catastrophic flaw in his cutting-edge designs. He didn't include a steering mechanism. To control this giant kite, Otto had to aggressively wiggle his hips and shift his body weight around like a guy trying to stay on a mechanical bull. So on August 9th, he launched himself off an artificial hill, trying to set a new distance record. Instead, a strong gust of wind caught his glider. With zero steering wheel or rudder to correct his path, Otto instantly became a helpless, 15-meter-high human lawn dart. He nosedived straight into the dirt, snapping his spine. His famous last words on his deathbed were, "Sacrifices must be made." Bro, you didn't need a sacrifice. You just needed a joystick. Speaking of entirely avoidable sacrifices, let's circle back to our boy from the intro, Franz Reichelt. It's 1912 in Paris. Franz was a tailor who designed a parachute suit for pilots. Basically, it was a bunch of rods and silk that made him look like a majestic, deeply confused bat. To prove to the world that his drip was functional, he got permission to test it off the first deck of the Eiffel Tower. The Parisian authorities specifically told him, hey, we are approving this for a mannequin drop only, but Franz? Franz had zero chill, maximum ego, and a death wish. Security. Franz, where is the test dummy? Franz, I am the dummy, monsieur. In front of a massive crowd of journalists and spectators, Franz stepped off the 60-meter ledge, fully believing he was about to glide over Paris. Instead, the suit did absolutely nothing. It instantly folded up around him like a tragic silk burrito, and he dropped straight down like a sack of anvils. He left a literal Franz-sized crater in the frozen earth. It's one of those crazy historical facts that sounds like a Looney Tunes gag. But nope, he splattered right there on camera. Alright, let's move from the dudes who couldn't figure out gravity to the guys who couldn't figure out brakes, basic math, and impulse control. If you thought jumping off a building in a silk sleeping bag was peak weird history, wait until you hear about the adrenaline junkies who literally paid to end themselves. Let's rewind to July 31st, 1918. Francis Stanley, along with his twin brother, had invented the absolute Ferrari of the early 1900s, a steam-powered car. Francis used to casually roast gas-powered cars, calling them internal explosion engines. He thought his steam kettle on wheels was the superior flex, and honestly, it was. It was quiet, didn't break down, and went incredibly fast. But maybe too fast. One day, Francis was tearing down a road in Massachusetts, basically treating a dirt path like the Autobahn. He was hauling absolute ass when suddenly, a farmer's horse-drawn cart spawned out of nowhere. Francis: "I am speed. I am the future of locomotion. Farmer: got any oats, son?" Going way too fast to brake, Francis violently jerked the steering wheel, completely Tokyo drifted off the road, and slammed headfirst into a giant pile of lumber. The car flipped, and Francis was taken out by a bunch of random wood. Ford's Model T eventually took over the market, and Francis's legacy was basically becoming a high-speed splinter. Now, fast forward to January 1985, meet Karel Soucek, a Canadian stuntman who actually survived going over Niagara Falls in a custom barrel. Naturally, his ego was through the roof. For his next trick, he decided to drop from the ceiling of the Houston Astrodome a solid 55 meters in the air into a tiny water tank that was only 3 meters deep. Let me do the math for you. A massive steel barrel falling from a stadium roof into what is essentially a backyard kiddie pool. What could go wrong? Karel blew $45,000 building this styrofoam-lined metal coffin, plus $500 in fines because he didn't even have a permit. He gets locked inside, hoisted up to the ceiling, and... oops. The release mechanism glitches. The barrel drops prematurely, starts spinning out of control, and completely misses the water. It smashed directly onto the hard concrete edge of the tank. The impact crushed him like a stepped-on soda can. It's hard to believe that actually happened, but it's a grim reminder that physics doesn't care about your stuntman resume. And if you think we left this kind of DIY stupidity in the past, let me introduce you to Mad Mike Hughes in the futuristic year of 2020. Mike was a stuntman who built a literal steam-powered rocket in his backyard. His master plan? Launch himself into the sky to eventually see the Earth from above with his own eyes. On February 22nd, Mike hopped into his backyard missile out in the California desert for a TV show called Homemade Astronauts. A crowd gathered, cameras were rolling. The countdown hits 0, the rocket blasts off, and immediately clips a random steel ladder someone left right next to the launch pad. The ladder violently tore off the parachute upon liftoff. The rocket shot up in an arc, ran out of juice, and nosedived straight back into the dirt at 805 kilometers per hour. He was vaporized instantly. It's tragic, but also, maybe don't park your launch pad next to a ladder from the hardware store. Let's pivot from backyard daredevils to the real heavy hitters of history. The guys whose brain power was off the charts, but their luck was deep in the negative. First up, Thomas Andrews. If you want a classic example of weird history, look no further than the man who built the ultimate nautical flex, the Titanic. Back in 1912, Thomas designed this colossal ocean liner with massive steam engines. It was supposed to be the absolute peak of human engineering. Thomas: "I have created the unsinkable ship. God himself could not sink this vessel. Mother Nature, hold my ice cube." You already know how this movie ends. On its very first trip, the Titanic completely beefed it into an iceberg. Thomas spent his final hours tossing deck chairs into the freezing water and helping people into lifeboats before going down with his own giant, sinking invention. But hey, at least Thomas Andrews didn't blow himself up in his living room. That specific honor goes to Max Valier in 1930. Max was obsessed with rockets. He wanted to go to space so badly that he just started strapping rockets to anything with wheels, railway cars, sleds, and regular cars. But gunpowder wasn't cutting it, so he started messing with liquid fuel. Now, if you or I were mixing highly explosive liquid oxygen, we'd probably want a bunker, right? Max? Nah. He was just chilling in a regular room with a table, a chair, and absolutely zero protective gear. No safety goggles, no fire-resistant suit, just vibes and a soldering lamp. Max: "Alright, let's just crank this valve a little bit." Assistant: "Bro, are you sure you don't want to wear some safety glasses?" Max: "Trust me, bro, safety is for cowards." Spoiler, you should never trust the bro. The combustion chamber violently exploded, throwing Max backward. A piece of shrapnel pierced his pulmonary artery, and he was gone in 10 minutes. He was only 35 years old. Finally, we reached the final boss of our list, Thomas Midgley Jr. If anyone ever deserved a karmic Uno reverse card, it was this guy. Thomas didn't just invent something that killed him, he invented things that nearly killed the entire planet. First, he created leaded gasoline to stop car engines from making annoying knocking noises. Sure, it stopped the noise, but it also poisoned millions of people and literally dropped the global IQ level. Then, looking for an encore, he invented Freon for refrigerators, which proceeded to absolutely nuke the Earth's ozone layer. It is one of those crazy historical facts that neither of those toxic nightmares actually took him out. No, Thomas contracted polio at age 51, which left him paralyzed. Being an inventor, he rigged up a complex system of ropes and pulleys over his bed so he could pull himself up without help. It was a brilliant, seemingly harmless piece of engineering. Until one day, he was trying to get up, and the ropes tangled around his neck. He fought for air but couldn't get free, slowly strangling to death in his own bed. That's right. The guy who poisoned the atmosphere was choked out by his own safety harness. When you hear that, you just have to shake your head and realize, wow, that actually happened. So there you have it, folks. 9 absolute legends who looked at the basic laws of physics, said, nah, I'd win, and got immediately humbled by their own inventions. From yeeting off the Eiffel Tower in a fancy silk blanket to poisoning the entire planet only to get choked out by your own bedsheets, we have covered some god-tier crazy historical facts today. The moral of the story here? If you ever build a steampunk rocket, a flying car, or a giant metal barrel in your garage, for the love of everything, just pay a crash test dummy to take the first ride. Every time I look back at these wild events, I still cannot wrap my head around the fact that that actually happened. Reality really is way dumber than fiction. If you are obsessed with this kind of dark, hilarious, and completely unhinged, weird history, you know what to do. If you don't want your history to be this dumb, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and tell me in the comments which of these guys had the most ridiculous exit. See you in the next one. Stay safe, and please, stop trying to glue wings to your car.